Hey you all, so today I wanted to share just a little bit of my testimony with you. Just a small snippet because I think that inspiration can be found in it and so can uplift. And so here goes. Many of you all may know that I am a nurse, but many of you may not know that I actually failed out of nursing school. And so I just wanted to share that story with you and share how I got to where I am today. I'm actually currently an ICU travel nurse and I work in a neurosurgical ICU at a trauma level 1 center. And so I just wanted to share how I got to where I am today. So sit back, relax. If you need some inspiration and motivation, this video is definitely for you. Growing up, I was very heavily involved in church. I was very close to my grandparents. My grandparents were very God-fearing people. I even lived with them for some time, but that's another story for a different video. But yeah, so my grandparents were very heavily involved in church, and so was I. I went to church several times a week, and I just remember my grandparents always talking about how good God was and how he performed all of these miracles and how his works were so wondrous and, you know, marvelous, all of these things. And I didn't doubt it. I didn't question them, but I just couldn't relate to it. You know, I didn't see it for myself. I didn't see him doing those things in my life. And so I just couldn't, you know, make it personal to me. But I was very active in church, almost out of habit. Not that I didn't believe, but it's just what I was supposed to be doing. And so that's what I did. And then fast forward, I get into college and I still went to church sometimes, but I fell back like completely. Like, I mean, when I say sometimes, I mean 2 or 3 times a year, like including the holidays. Like, I just completely fell off. And when I got to college, I just felt like, oh, I'm in control of my own life and I'm doing my own thing. And that led to lots of failure. But yeah, we'll get to that. I'm in college and I had always wanted to work in healthcare because I always felt like you need to be helping people. Like, I just felt innately called to helping people and helping them through their healing processes and helping them to become better. And so that was what my focus was, and I just was like, oh, nursing does that, so that's what I'm gonna do. I applied to nursing school. I got in. I was extremely happy. But my problem was I was much too heavily involved in other things at the same time. So when I was in high school, I barely had to study. I didn't have to read or any of that. And when I got to college, it was like, oh no, girl, like, you don't want to read, or, you know, you want to spend time with these extracurricular activities. It's not gonna work. So I joined a sorority. I started doing pageants. I just started like going out. I was just doing all of this extra stuff that wasn't necessarily like vital, and it kind of just pulled my attention away from where it actually needed to be at the time, and my schooling ended up suffering. So I ended up failing, which is, if you're in nursing, you know that scoring below a C is a failure, and if you score below a C in 2 courses, then you're out, you're done, you're out of the program. And so that's what happened to me. I scored below a C in 2 courses and I was absolutely devastated. And I just wanted to take matters into my own hands and just hurry up and get back into school. And so I was looking at all of these different programs. I had researched literally every school near me, and just applied, and no door was opening. Like, back-to-back doors were getting shut in my face, and I just thought, like, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, so like, what? I don't get it. And so I just kept on trying, and it's just kind of like, you know, if you have failures on your transcript and you apply to the same program at a different school, they look at your transcript and they're like, okay, obviously you can't handle this type of coursework, so why would we take you? I even applied to the program that I actually got accepted into later on, and the dean actually reached out to me and said, maybe you should try something else. You know, maybe nursing isn't for you. And if the dean of the program is telling you nursing isn't for you, you just give up on it. So yeah, that's kind of what I did. I kind of just gave up, and I thought, okay, well, I still want to work in healthcare. I still want to work with people, and I still want to help heal people. So I settled on sonography. And I found a program. It accepted 12 people a year, and I applied to that program, which is crazy. Like, I don't know if they lost their accreditation or what, but for like 1 complete year, they didn't take any students, which thank God that they didn't, because that ended up being like a blessing for me. But I was just in limbo. And during that time, I was just like, I'm not gonna, I just can't keep focusing on it. I had racked my brain so much that it was just becoming way too much. Like, I was so depressed. I felt like everybody was wondering about me. People, I mean, even if they really weren't, I just felt like everybody was looking at me. I had started school with this certain group of people. I had joined the sorority, and all of them had graduated, and like, here I am, just out here all by myself, like, don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I just felt so ashamed. I went to my shell. I didn't want to talk to the people that I had went to school with, so I made a completely different group of friends, and we just partied all the time. Like, that's where my focus was. My grandmother had passed away, and my grandfather ended up getting sick, and during that time I felt so empty. Like I said, I had gotten involved in pageants, and I had actually done really good in them. I had started modeling for a restaurant that I was working at. I had started doing pageants through that restaurant. I was able to travel for free. I even appeared on like Fox Sports 1, which is a TV channel if you all don't know. And it just kind of seemed like I was on top of the world to the people like on the outside looking in. But if you knew me, like on the inside, I was a complete mess. I had completely changed my friend group. I didn't want to associate with this certain group of people because I didn't want them to ask me how I was doing. I didn't want them to ask me like what was my plan or what was I intending to do, because I didn't know. Like, my life was a hot mess, because I'm like, these pageants and stuff, this won't last forever. This isn't my career. So I just didn't know what to do. And so I felt destitute on the inside, even though on the outside everything looked good and it seemed like I was happy. I truly wasn't. And I now realize that God was giving me voids that only he could fill, and I was trying to fill them with materialistic things, and that just didn't work. So during that time, I felt hopeless, I felt helpless, but I also started feeling like, you need to go back to church. And it just literally came out of nowhere. Like, it was this feeling in the bottom of my stomach, like a burning desire, like, go to church. It was crazy. So I actually went back to the church that my grandparents had raised me up in, and I kept going. I just felt like I just needed to be chasing after Jesus, and so that's just what I did. And I so happened to find another church that I fell in love with during that same time, and I actually left my family church, joined this church, and I mean, the church was amazing. I chose this church all by myself. I went all by myself. And so I went from like my family completely filling up a pew, and every single Sunday we sat in this certain spot and we went all the time, you know, when I was younger, opposed to fast forward now in March of 2016 is when I found this church. Now I'm going to church by myself. I didn't feel like I needed to be with anybody else. I didn't need anybody to make me go. I just was like, I'm here straight up for Jesus, and I feel like I'm being filled here, and I love it. My mindset completely changed. Instead of going out Tuesday through Sunday and feeling like I needed to be with this other group of friends, I felt like, no, you need to be chasing after the Lord. You need to get focused. You need to like put your mind on him. And so that's when things really started to change for me. And after being in this church for a little bit, I decided the program where the dean told me like, oh, maybe you should try something else. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to apply. Like, I had given up on this, but I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And it's so crazy because I had had a full scholarship when I first got into nursing school at my former university. Completely messed that up because I failed. And so this program was like 3 times more than my original program. And I just thought, like, you are going to go into so much debt if you do not do this and do it the right way. Like, that was logical thinking. So logical thinking would have said, you failed out of the program before. The dean already told you maybe you should try something else. Like, you're not going to get in. But even if you did just so happen to get in, you're going to be in so much debt. And it's just too big of a risk. Like, what if you don't even get the degree again? But I did it anyways. I prayed about it, and I just felt like God was speaking to me. And I felt like so much discernment on the situation. This time around, I was like, you're not doing it by yourself. Like, you have someone almighty and all powerful with you. I finally knew God for myself, and so I was like, I'm doing it with him. And now that I have him on my side, I feel like I can do anything. It's an amazing feeling. So I decided, what the heck, I'm gonna apply to this program. So I applied, I got in, and things were completely different that go around for me. I met a group of girls who like just adopted me into their friend group, and they were like, look, you're going to be in our study group and we're all going to be successful and we're going to end this well. They were absolutely heaven sent. I don't think that it's any coincidence that I met those women. Even outside of that, so I started school and I was working like 6 days a week, serving at the restaurant that I had mentioned prior, and I was broke. Like, I had bills. I ended up having to move back home with my mom and everything. I was super broke. And when I got into nursing school, I was like, you're not working more than 3 shifts a week. So I worked all day on Saturday, and I worked Sunday, or I worked Friday morning, and then I worked 2 shifts, like a double on Saturday, and that was it. Friday, Saturday, that's it. That's all I worked. Moved in with my mom because I felt like I needed to make sacrifice and I needed to compromise. I needed to meet God halfway, and I was completely willing to do that. But like I said, I was super broke, and I was paying school out of pocket. Like, I was tithing everything that I made at the restaurant, and for some odd reason I made like enough to get by, abundantly more, you know what I mean? So I was able to pay out of pocket toward my schooling, but I also had scholarships. Like, scholarships were kind of falling in my lap. So I had started off not having any money, messing up a full ride. Then I got a scholarship through the school. Then I got a scholarship through a local hospital. Then I got a scholarship through a program that was for like minorities. And it's just like all of this stuff was just happening to me that made absolutely no sense. I mean, I had failed. I came from failure and I was getting scholarships. Like, what? Makes absolutely no sense, no logical sense. So even outside of that, like maybe 4 months before I graduated, I actually set up an interview with my manager, well, who was my former manager. I went in to see her for an interview, and she was like, I don't need to ask you any questions. It's fine. Like, you have the job. You can start whenever you finish this summer. And I was like, what? So, I mean, let's just think about that. I failed multiple times. My GPA tanked because of those failures. I was in a program where I had a full ride, messed it up, get into a program, I get scholarships out of nowhere. I get success out of nowhere after being told that I wasn't going to be able to do it. Even my friends, like some of my friends were like, are you sure that's what you want to do? Yeah, don't listen to those people. Pray and listen to what God says. So yeah, even like people just questioning me about whether or not I could actually do it, or whether or not I was wasting my time. And then also getting a job without even having to interview for it. Like, my first job was in the ICU. Do y'all know how hard that is? Like, some ICUs don't even hire new grads. So yeah, like, and now to where I am today, having had finished out my contract with my hospital, you know, paid for some of my schooling, having had finished that contract out, having had learned from, you know, one of the best hospital systems in Louisville, Kentucky, and now working at a trauma level 1 hospital in a major city, like, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. And I just wanted to share this with you all because, you know, when I was younger, I felt like I didn't know what my grandparents were talking about when they said that God does like all these wondrous and marvelous things. I didn't get it. But when that happened to me, I completely got it. And I just felt like, wow, this is exactly what they were talking about. Because nothing that I'm currently going through, nothing that's being given to me makes sense. And it took me losing everything. It took me feeling hopeless. It took me feeling helpless. It took me feeling like I was just empty. You know, with material things that normally would have filled me up, I was still very empty. It took me feeling like that and just submitting myself before God, like giving up everything and just being at his feet and chasing after his heart and just fully focusing on my relationship with him and praying about what I should be doing. Once I did that and I laid it all at his feet, he finally made a way for me. And I realized he wouldn't have got the glory if I would have went on through nursing school that very first time and I would have been successful and I would have been fine. I would have been ungrateful. I would have never made my way back to him. But the way that things worked out, I'm now able to use my testimony for other people. There are people that I meet all the time that think that, oh, there's no way that I can do this. And I want you to know I'm sharing this because you can. And whether it's to do with school or anything else, whatever kind of adversity you're facing it for a reason. I want you to know that you're not the only one who has gone through something. We are all going through our own things and facing our own battles. But God puts us through trials and tribulations for a reason. And there will come a day when it'll be over. There'll come a day when you will succeed. And I just want you to know that I'm praying for you. I'm wishing the best for you. And I know that you can.